Welcome back. New week, and we've got a new sport. Not a new sport, but a new sport on the chat anyway. The NBA is still going on, believe it or not. We're heading towards, we've got the last, I think, 5 or 6 games now. It's a shortened season, only 10 games short, so normally they play 82 games. This year they're playing 72 because of COVID. They started the season very, very late. This one's an interesting one because the playoffs normally are just the top 8 teams with the best records go to the playoffs. They play round one, they play a semis, they play a conference finals, and then the winner of each conference plays for the NBA title. Quite straightforward. This year, they've decided to mix it up a little bit, I guess for fans. It's a good idea, I guess, in theory. They've got the top 6 this time are going to qualify for the playoffs. And then you've got the teams who rank from 7th to 10th in each conference will play off against each other. So that you're kind of making, I guess, people who are fans of like league formats and that, it's not really good for them. But I guess, for the fans, you get to see more teams. You get to a bigger chance of your team making the playoffs. Even if you're coming 10th in in your division, out of 15 teams, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs, for me, and you're going to have a losing record. So you're going to have lost some of these teams. Are going to have lost a lot more games than have won, and some either in the playoffs. This is a one-off game against someone else. You can always beat them, and then suddenly you're in the Eastern Conference Finals or whatever if you get a couple of games together. So it's a strange one, but that's coming to a head now. You've got the last 2 weeks now of the regular season. LeBron's been injured for a while. He's had an ankle sprain, so when he's been out, and Anthony Davis, who's the Lakers' second best player, he's also been out. So the Lakers are sliding towards this playoff tournament. They were in the top 6 comfortably all year. They were leading for most of the year. LeBron gets injured, and then now they are up one place. I mean, they're level with the team who are 7th, and who are in that playing tournament at the minute. So by the looks of things, LeBron's going to be playing extra games coming off the back of an injury, which isn't what he wants, given that he's in the tougher conference. Even though the super team, you might have heard, Brooklyn Nets, have added three of the top 5 best players in the NBA on the same team. They're firing on all cylinders in the other conference, so LeBron won't have to play them until the finals. But that's bubbling along nicely. I was kind of keeping an eye on what was going on because obviously the playoffs is where it really matters. A lot of the time in the NBA, there's a thing called load management, which you may or may not have heard of, where a lot of these top players just take games off, in brackets. They kind of just say, I've got a sore this or ankle this, and they'll just miss games because, it's like the MLB, baseball, there's a lot of regular season games. And because it's a playoff system, winning the regular season kind of means nothing. Well, it means absolutely nothing, actually, in all American sports. Because you go into a playoff system, and then playoffs is where it really matters, which, is good and bad, because obviously you play obviously the MLB 162 games, the NBA 82 games. So a lot of basketball, a lot of sport to be playing across 8 or 9 months, however long it is, to then have to play a team best out of 7. If you lose that, your whole season's done. So it's a strange one to add, to have these kind of players that just decide that they want to just take games off. So that's why, going back to my original point, that's why the regular season doesn't mean a whole lot, because players take games off. Teams kind of go through lulls. They play, long series against certain teams, and the playoffs is where it really matters. So playoffs are coming up soon. Should be very, very entertaining because a lot of very good teams this year. A lot of interesting storylines. I mean, that Brooklyn Nets team looks very, very good. The Lakers going for another win. They wouldn't be favourites, I don't think. I mean, LeBron is LeBron, but I think at the minute they're not looking. I mean, they're losing. I think they lost 3 in a row now. LeBron's back, I think, as of the last game. So yeah, watch this space. I think I'm gonna cover it a lot more, obviously going into the playoffs, and see who finishes where. But yeah, Lakers aren't doing it. So if you're worried about LeBron, he's been injured and the team aren't doing that well. That's the that's the summary over in the NBA. Back over here, the Premier League was pretty standard. Like nothing especially newsworthy. All the teams won. All the teams that should have won did. Chelsea, City, Arsenal and Spurs all won. I guess the only bit of news was Man U's game against Liverpool was postponed because the fans stormed the stadium. I say stormed. It's a bit like the capital at the start of the year. It's not a lot of news, not a lot of information is known about what happened at the minute, so from what I've read. But it seems like they got in. I mean, they got in to the training ground last week, and they spoke to the manager. I say they spoke to. Solskjaer went out there and spoke to him. But they've stormed the stadium, got on the pitch, setting off flares. It sounds like there's a lot of criminal damage up in the actual Manchester city centre. And all of that, this pretty much isn't Super League related, even though this is kind of like a carry on. Obviously, a lot of other teams, they've had protesting. I mean, Chelsea were protesting outside the ground, stopping the players getting into that game. That was the day before, or the day when they cancelled the Super League. So this for United, for a bit of context, so the owners, the Glazer family from America, they bought Man U in 2005, 2006. And there was a big backlash to that because I think the fans didn't like how the club would start to get run by like a business and not as an actual football team. There's been a massive anti-ownership campaign by Man United's fans for the last 15, 16 years. So this is like a long running issue. And the Super League was definitely, it seems to be the last match to set the fire. So that was pretty, as far as games getting postponed, there's not normally, I mean, it's pretty hard to get a game postponed, let alone for safety concerns, from your own fans. So that game will get rearranged for some time. I'm not sure when, because Man United have games during the week for the rest of the season. So not ideal for anyone, I suppose. But I guess watch this space. We'll see what happens with the postponement. I guess we'll see what happens with the ownership, because there's a lot of pressure being put on. It doesn't sound like the Man United owners are that bothered about fan opinion. So this protest, which is pretty massive as far as protests go in sports and something like this, might all be for nothing. So if the Premier League wasn't that great, two leagues in Europe are very, very interesting at the minute. La Liga, like I said the other week, about how Madrid can't get out the top, won't ever fall out the top four. There's a 4-team race, which is very, very peculiar for Spain. Normally it's 2 or 3. This year we've got 4 teams, and they're all separated by like 2 or 3 points. So Atletico Madrid are leading at the minute, 2 points ahead of Barcelona, who are tied with Real Madrid. So 76, Atletico Madrid 76 points. Barca and Madrid are 74. Sevilla hanging on there. They've got a game in hand. If they win that, they're only a point behind these guys. This weekend coming, Atletico Madrid are playing Barcelona. So that's going to be a title decider for one of them. There's only 4 games left, so loser you'd expect is going to be out of that. Madrid as defending champions, they're going to be hanging around, hopefully picking up on the scraps if those two teams maybe draw. And over in France, so PSG, the money team, who've absolutely dominated that league. They've won 7 out of the last 8 league titles. Have another. It's not really there's 4 teams technically in it, but there's only 3 games left. So for it to become more than just the 2-horse race that it is now between Lille and Paris Saint-Germain would be hard. But again, 3 games left. There's a point in it between the 2 teams. You've got Neymar and Mbappe trying to get another league title. I'd expect before they leave. I wouldn't imagine Mbappe is going to be there next year. Neymar, depending on who joins him or who leaves, might be there. So this is kind of a last chance saloon for them. And who knows what will happen if those 2 leave. I mean, there's rumours of Ronaldo going there because Juventus, one league that has been sorted out, Inter Milan stopped Juventus winning their 10th in a row. So so Juventus might even end up out of the Champions League spots altogether over in Italy. So the leagues, apart from the Premier League, because Man City are now a win away. If Liverpool had beaten Man U on the weekend, they would have City would have won the league. So City are about to win the league in England. A lot of other interesting leagues going on. Again, watch your space. Next week, the week after, you should see like a resolution towards that. Staying on football, Champions League was last week, obviously. Chelsea and Madrid played out a 1-1 draw. Chelsea looked good in that game. I did say it was going to be cagey. Madrid weren't completely at it. Chelsea should have probably won the game if it wasn't for Timo Werner, Chelsea striker who still isn't firing on all cylinders yet. I'm not sure if he ever will, but Madrid, got a goal back after being behind. Chelsea's away goal is going to be important, obviously, going to the second leg, which is going to be in London tomorrow. So they're in a good position given they've got the away goal, but Madrid are a top team. But again, like I've been saying the last couple of weeks, Chelsea they're looking solid. They're looking so solid. Like I'm a little bit surprised how solid they're looking, given how bad they looked earlier in the season. They haven't exactly overhauled their teams, the same players, but they've got a system of the way of playing now, which works for them. The other semi, Man City beat PSG, and now that game was crazy because that was one-way traffic. PSG was smashing the game in the first half, and then as PSG are capable of, they had a bit of an implosion. When the game gets a bit heated and tense and back and forth, PSG are a team, and certainly some of their players, Neymar in particular, they have this kind of ability just to melt down or get too emotional, get too into the game, and they don't keep calm. So that kind of did happen. Man City scored 2 long-range goals, one free kick that went all the way in that shouldn't have, but it was missed by the goalkeeper, and another long-range effort as well. So City get 2 away goals, which is big. It does give them a lot of breathing room at home, which they're pretty good. PSG coming to Manchester to having to beat Man City comfortably as well, because they can't just win 1-0 because City got 2 away goals. So the away goals rule is a bit strange in Europe, but you'd expect City to get through that now because they got 2 away goals and playing at home. Yeah, they're pretty comfortable. They got to rest a load of players on the weekend because their squad's so massive, so it kind of helps. So yeah, those 2 games finally poised over the next 2 days. Could have any sort of combination. I wouldn't like to, I would say City should probably get that one done. But in the other semi, Real Madrid and Chelsea could be either. One tie that is not going to be could be either is the Europa League semi. So Man U beat Roma 6-2 after being 2-1 down at half time. Dominating performance, one of the best performances of the year from United. So they're pretty much in the Europa League final. Arsenal lost and they're both down to 10 men at the end. So Arsenal were down a man, but they still managed to get a goal. Then Villarreal got a man sent off. So that game is kind of nicely poised in a way, because Arsenal, they did get an away goal, so they only lost 2-1. Now they're playing at home. Again, so it could be a double. You could have 2 Premier League teams in the Champions League final, 2 Premier League teams in the Europa League final, which is very much still, if anything, as far as favourites go, you would probably expect that, actually. You'd expect all 4 English teams to be in both finals. So again, this week's another solid one. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all those games get wrapped up, and we'll know who the finalists are pretty soon. Formula 1. This one was, the headline figure was, I think for sure it's as you'd expect. I think if you followed it the whole way through testing and all the way through to now, it's kind of, you'd expect a result like this to happen. So Hamilton won. Was a very impressive performance. The one that I think only Hamilton can produce out of the guys who can win the championship, of Verstappen, of Bottas and Perez. Hamilton at the minute is the only one that can win a race like this. Like, he didn't get on pole, did manage to beat Verstappen though. So he had Bottas, his teammate, who's finally kind of woken up. Bottas, Hamilton, Verstappen. The opening phase of the race was pretty comfortable. Then there's a safety car, so everyone had to bunch up together. And then, interesting, on the restart, the guy in front kind of becomes the safety car. So he takes everyone around at the same speed, same speed when the actual safety car goes into the pits. So Bottas was clever at the very beginning. He slowed right down at all the way to the line where you have to go. And then Hamilton, after the race, he said he took his eye off Bottas for 1 second, well, not even a second, half a second. And Bottas went. Verstappen was following Bottas, so he managed to beat Hamilton off the line. So he was second for a while. But the pace difference was clear. Hamilton definitely had a quicker car. Hamilton chased down Verstappen, overtook him. Very, very good move. Very quickly as well, after a couple of laps. Then goes after Valtteri Bottas. Overtakes Bottas. Very, very impressive move around the outside in turn 1. And then kind of built a good gap and then held that. Verstappen was in third for a lot of the race, but couldn't quite get to Bottas. And then the pit stops happened. Bottas made a mistake after the pit stops, so Verstappen got above him. And Red Bull left Perez out, the other Red Bull driver, almost lap 50, I think it was, almost right to the end, because Perez is very good on his tyres. He's very good at saving tyres, he's very good at keeping them, good for longer than others. So he was out in front for a while. Hamilton just overtook him towards the end of the race because he'd been out there on tyres that were way too old. And then Hamilton ended up keeping a good gap, a very strong gap. Then, interesting, because there's a point for fastest lap, which is kind of a newish thing. I think it's about 4 or 5 seasons old now. So if you get the fastest lap in the race, you get an extra point. So at one point, Hamilton had it. And then they pitted Perez, because he had so much time behind him. They pitted Perez, got some new fresh tyres on there. Perez took fastest lap. So in a constructor battle, every point this season is going to matter. So Red Bull had the fastest laps. Then they pitted Bottas. So Mercedes pitted Bottas to try and get that fastest lap. He got it. And then because Bottas had pitted, obviously Verstappen had about 30 seconds back to Bottas in third place. Red Bull pitted Verstappen to try and get the fastest lap on the very last lap of the race. So Hamilton didn't have enough time, bearing where he was on the track and how many laps there were left, because obviously you need to be able to pit and have one whole lap of full speed. So Hamilton had already crossed the line, so he didn't have enough time. Verstappen got the fastest lap as far as when they crossed the line, but he'd went too fast. Track limits is something you might hear about quite a lot. It was Verstappen's problem in race 1, where he went too wide around the track to overtake Hamilton. This time he went too wide on the track in his fastest lap attempt. So the two of the key moments of the season so far for Verstappen, made a mistake. Well, made a mistake. I think overall in Bahrain, the first race, trying to overtake Hamilton off the track, and then wasn't able to catch back up. And then this time going wide. It's not really that much of a problem. It's only 1 point, but these little things do add up over the course of the season. I think Verstappen's now seeing how good Lewis Hamilton is, because you have to be very good the whole way through. You can't really have too many mistakes. I mean, Verstappen's making small mistakes, but it's enough. Hamilton made a mistake last week, or 2 weeks ago in Imola, but he managed to get a bit of luck with the safety cars and come second. So, wasn't an all-time race, but it was still a very good race. I think you need some of these. It can't all be last corner lunges and crashes and stuff. Sometimes one car is a little bit better than the other, and then you've just got to maintain the gaps as they are. So overall, a little kind of recap of where everyone is. As far as pre-season into now, at the very back, the teams are still there. Like, there's no surprising fall down. So Haas with young Mick Schumacher, Williams with Russell, who had a crash last week in Imola. They're at the back. They're clearly the weaker teams. They're focusing the development and research towards next season's car. So they've already stopped. They're not progressing this year's car at all. They're focusing all their resources, because they haven't got many resources. They're focusing it all on next year, which a lot of the teams are doing, apart from the very, very front, because you have to keep getting better this year. So most of the teams actually now are focusing on next year. They're not trying to really develop their car now. Obviously, they'll add tweaks, but they won't spend massive amounts of money on developing this year's car when next year the regulations are going to change so dramatically. Also at the back still, Alfa Romeo, they're steady, nothing crazy. They're a little bit better than the back two, but they're not challenging for points. Aston Martin and AlphaTauri are two teams that I guess in that midfield is anyone from third all the way down, I guess, to seventh now. They're at the back of that little train of the midfield. Aston Martin really have struggled. Bear in mind they were the Racing Point, the pink team last year, who were, I think, third. I think they got third or fourth. Either way, they were the next best after the top two, but they've fallen all the way back because of the regulation changes, which have affected all the teams that. Okay, so basically there's two different types of cars. So the car called with a setup called high rake, which means they're tilted a lot more up at the back, which helps airflow underneath. This year, those cars are being benefited more, and the cars with lower rake, which is more flat underneath the back, like Mercedes, like Aston Martin, have been punished a lot more. So Aston Martin are really struggling with their low rake car this year, with Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll. They're not doing too well. AlphaTauri with Tsunoda and Gasly, again, haven't really challenged towards the top. They're just they're very much a midfield team, so they're not doing especially well. Alpine, which were Renault, with the old double world champion Fernando Alonso. Alonso was very good this weekend. He's starting to get his, I think he's 39. Had a couple of years out of the sport. He's been racing in other types of cars. He's back now, starting to find his feet. Alpine are starting to go a little bit upwards. They're definitely the better of the teams I've mentioned so far. And I think they got 7th and 8th yesterday. So they're doing pretty well. And then the top 4 are separated. There's Tier 1 and Tier 2. So Tier 2 definitely is Ferrari, who are doing much better than everyone thought. Bear in mind, they were one of the worst teams last year. And McLaren, who are solidly third best. And Lando Norris is third in the championship, above Bottas. So Lando Norris and McLaren are doing very, very well. But as expected still, I think Danny Ricciardo is struggling in this new team. My preseason pick for someone who's going to shine. But I think just like Alonso, just like Sainz, who's moved to Ferrari as well, and like the rookies as well, they're going to take some time to get used to things, and then you'll start seeing them improve. And then at the front, Red Bull definitely behind. I say definitely, they've got a better car at times, but like I said last week, overall, Mercedes have a strong team, and 2 strong drivers, and strategy seems to work, and their car is still pretty good, and they're clearly developing at quite a high pace. So, Red Bull are very good. Verstappen's very good. Hamilton is upping his game clearly. So I mean, as far as starts go, I mean, Verstappen, Hamilton, 1-2 all 3 races. That's how it's probably going to continue. Certainly into the coming weeks. It will depend very much on how much development each car does. And I think definitely Mercedes seem to be on the up. I mean, Mercedes were a lot better this week. And Mercedes had a slightly quicker car last week as well, 2 weeks ago in Imola. But yeah, between the rain and the damage to Hamilton's car, and obviously Bottas crashed out, we couldn't really see it as much. I think if it was a dry race a couple of weeks ago, Hamilton may have won the race, but Mercedes would have done a lot better. So it's kind of Red Bull. And Red Bull are still the underdogs in terms of overall package. They've probably got slightly the better car overall, but Mercedes are so solid, and they're used to doing this year in, year out, and they're pushing themselves now, whereas before they probably weren't really pushing themselves as much. But Red Bull, I think, we'll see. I mean, the next 3 races, you've got Spain this weekend, Monaco, which is kind of a toss-up. It's very much downforce and kind of how much aero and how you can move through these tight, very, very tight, twisty corners. It's not really much of a power circuit. You don't need to have the fastest car. You just need to have the most nimble car. So that's kind of like a one-off strange race. And then Azerbaijan is similar to Monaco, but there's a big straight, so power will come into it a little bit. So, like I said at the beginning, pre-season and race one, they're all the same place. Now we've started to get some new tracks in there, get some different development. The teams are going to start, showing what they've actually got. The next 3 races are really going to show. By the end of these next 3 races, I think we'll know for sure who's going where. And this weekend, they're going to Spain, which everyone knows very, very well. And Mercedes dominated last year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, the sports and the big events are coming thick and fast. There's a lot of big events up on the horizon, which I'll be excited to break down in more detail when the Olympics is coming. A lot of golf majors are coming. A lot of these big finals are coming. And there's some other sports, there's some big events in those, which I'll go into in due course. But another week in the books. Pretty, if there can be such a thing as a straightforward week. But every week is interesting still. Even weeks that, the Super League didn't blow up or, Formula One wasn't wild. It's still interesting to me anyway. But yeah, appreciate the attention, and I'll see you next week.